You're listening to the Allman Report on NewsTalkSTL.
A good Friday evening to all of you and yours. It's Friday, people, and we're in love with common sense conservatism. It's the Allman Report. Jamie Allman, pleased and privileged to be with you. Hope you are having a fantastic evening. Good morning this morning. Good evening this evening. Oh, yeah, no, big show for you right now, babies. Yeah. Uh-huh. First of all, I can't get this water bottle to stand up. It's driving me crazy. It's because the recycled water bottles, you know, if it's not, you know, when you open them, it squirts all over your face. But then they don't stand up. So it's just going to fall down. It's just going to weebles wobble, but they always fall down. Oh, well, that's just how it goes. I need to fill this with little hiatus tequila is what I need to do. Well, we'll see. Hey, big show. Yes, I have a rock star in the anti-Amendment 3 initiative, which is on the ballot. And, of course, it's like bees to honey. It's going to probably get a bunch of Democrats there. She is vehemently against it, as everybody should be. So we're going to talk about Amendment 3. And it's just another way for these folks to try to just go around Roe versus Wade and then prevent any state or Missouri from enacting anything related to any limitations on abortion. So we'll talk more about that, and also about Elon Musk, and he's coming out with the robotic taxis. Now, I've seen these before. They're called Waymos. Hey, Ethan Valencia, have you ever seen a robotic taxi, a driverless car?
I've seen one driverless car.
Okay. So these are in Tempe, Arizona, where Aiden goes to school. They have these Waymos. They're called Waymos. And you basically just download the app, and they are Jaguars. So they're Jaguar SUVs. They're pretty nice-looking cars, and they are totally driverless. And that's how you get in. Instead of calling an Uber or something, people still do Ubers, but you get into this car, and it's just it's amazing how they traverse the area robotically. Now, I have an aversion to any vehicle, getting into any vehicle where I don't at least see a human being behind the wheel, or where I'm actually having my hands on the wheel. And so it is kind of odd. I've never taken one, but I see them all over the place. They also have these interesting things on the campus too. And they have these, I guess they're Uber Eats robots. So if you order like a sandwich from Jimmy John's, they put it into this robot that wanders around campus. It looks like a wagon, and it's got food in it. And so far, no one's like just grab one, because I don't think a Jimmy John sandwich is that important to people. But it's just so weird to see all these robots everywhere. So we'll see how that driverless taxi works. But it's very, very popular. The only problem with the Waymo is that if there's any kind of construction or any kind of maybe a roadblock of some sort, the Waymo kind of freaks out, but it's monitored. It's got a camera in it, so it can monitor everybody, and it's pretty crazy. All right, so you ever remember the days back in the day when the kids were young, and you had T-ball, you know? And I always felt so sorry for the kids who actually couldn't even hit a T-ball, like even had trouble swinging and hitting the ball, even when it was teed up for them. Well, that's how it is for Tim Walz and Kamala Harris. They're having interviews with friendly media, and they can't even traverse the friendly media interviews. And again, the questions aren't necessarily easy, but still, they continue to do these interviews with people who are friendly in the media, and they screw them up even then. And keep in mind, this interview between Tim Walz and Michael Strahan, and this is interesting because this is ABC, and Strahan is no Rhodes Scholar by any stretch of the imagination, but he's all right. I mean, he's decent enough dude. And he's asking Walz all these questions, and Walz is just screwing them up.
Vice President Harris was asked this week on The View if she would have done anything differently than President Biden that he has done in the past 4 years. And she said, quote, "There is not a thing that comes to mind." And she later said she would have a Republican in her cabinet.
Yeah.
And when it comes to President Biden and the presidency, would you?
By the way, that Republican in her cabinet thing, what kind of Republican are you going to get? Some rhino? Of course you will. Anyway.
Anything that you would have done different?
Yeah, and look, as a governor, I was asked to be governor of this state when Donald Trump was president and when Joe Biden was there. And I watched Donald Trump dismiss the COVID pandemic. I watched him drive an economy into the ground. And I watched Joe Biden and Kamala Harris pick those pieces up. And I think for all of us, we make decisions, we reanalyze afterwards. I think the thing that drew me to this ticket, and I think what the vice president's talking about, is that her values on these hasn't changed. They have been working for the middle class. They've been doing all they can to make sure prices come down. They're protecting reproductive care.
So it makes me want to ask you, do you think that Biden's done everything right?
Well, look, I don't know if any of us do everything right, but I can tell you he's done everything in the best interest of the American public.
So, yeah. So this idea that somehow they're a different generation and a different breed than Joe Biden, once again, Kamala Harris has already reaffirmed that she would have done nothing differently. And then Walz reaffirms that he would have done nothing differently. So what's different about the Harris and Walz campaign? Nothing. Except, as her spokesman points out, she's a woman of color. So that's about it. But so this idea somehow that she's a different generation or a new breed or a new hope or we're not going back or whatever. Yeah, we are going to go back. But we're going to go back to Biden-Harris administration if Harris, in the off chance, is elected president. But Walz can't even traverse that or even make anything up that would be something akin to, hey, we're different. We have different policies. And as long as Biden keeps throwing Kamala Harris under the bus, I'm not quite sure why they don't, especially as we get desperate and as we get towards the actual election. So this is interesting about the high prices at the grocery store. And they should be able to knock this thing out of the park. And by the way, kudos to Michael Strahan for actually asking follow-up questions. But here's how it went.
Talk about the economy. That is the top issue for voters out there. 74% of voters said the past year they've had to cut back on groceries because of the rising costs, of course. And a lot of those voters, they're concerned.
And they're cutting back on French fries. We know that from yesterday's discussion. So
cast your vote for Kamala Harris, but she's responsible for that. Yeah. So how do you reach those voters? What do you say to those voters who may blame her for the economy right now?
Yeah, folks in the middle. Well, we talk to them about what are the policies that are going to make a difference. And we see some of the data, but data doesn't impact people in their daily lives. Go into the grocery store and you see false information, whether it's bird flu impacting eggs. But the reality for most people is if those costs are up, they want to know what you're going to do about it. I think that's why she's focusing on making sure whether it's home ownership more affordable, tax cuts for the middle class, and let's just be candid about this. There's price gouging piece of this.
Yeah, there's no price gouging going on. The profit margins at grocery stores is just above 1%. And, you know, this idea that they're going to do something different, well, they're not doing it. They've already admitted they're not going to do anything different. Here's another question from Michael Strahan.
They were saying that, hey, these are policies that Kamala Harris could have done 3 years ago when she was in the White House with President Biden, and she never did. What do you say to people who bring that up? Who say that?
Well, Donald Trump had 4 years to do it, if you're going to talk about that.
And he did. Actually, Donald Trump did it in 2 years in terms of the improvement of the economy, and then COVID came and all bets were off. But Donald Trump did do it. And he did it in 2 years.
What is you need a partner in Congress. You've seen these. We've seen different bills that are ready to pass, and Donald Trump makes sure he steps in. We saw it around immigration, a bipartisan bill, widely respected, wanting to make a difference in this, holding true to our values, securing the border. Donald Trump steps in and says, look, that's going to hurt my political future. Let's not make it happen.
Yeah, and let's just, and you guys are astute enough to know that the reality is that Donald Trump didn't step in. He had no power, really. But the concerns about that bill were that it was allowing thousands of illegals. It gave a win to the proponents of illegal alienship because it gave a certain level of allowances for illegal aliens to come in. So another non-answer. Now, this is a question about Walz's lying about carrying weapons in war and being at Tiananmen Square. And again, this is supposedly a friendly interview, a friendly network, and Walz probably thought it was going to be a cakewalk, but Strahan made sure it wasn't.
And you call yourself a knucklehead. Call yourself a knucklehead because you've made some statements that just aren't true. And the comment about weapons of war that I carried in war.
And by the way, just what we need is a leader who calls himself a knucklehead. Oh, shoot. My bad. Is that what we're going to hear when something goes wrong?
You said that you were in Hong Kong during the Tiananmen Square massacre when you weren't. You kind of chalked it all up to bad grammar or getting the dates wrong.
Yeah.
But your opponents say you lied to make yourself look better. Do they have a point?
Well, look, 35 years ago, got the opportunity to be in Hong Kong, be in China, learned a lot about it, served 24 years in the National Guard, passionately, in an instance, talking about gun violence in schools, on an instance there. Proud of the service that I've done. Proud to be a teacher in that classroom. Proud to have been very public all these years and owning it when I, said, look, I was there in August of '89. And I think what you see here, you saw it in Minnesota. I've been elected 8 times here. These things have been very public for folks here. They see the results of things that we pass. We see a state that's a top 5 state for business. We see 3rd best state, top 3 state for raising a child. And we've got the best health care. And I think the policies, whether it be dealing with China and understanding China's human rights record, what you can be certain there is that Kamala Harris and I aren't going to, pick dictators on speed dial. See, Xi Jinping is doing a good job during COVID, as Donald Trump said. And I think those lessons learned over a lifetime of being very public, whether it's in the classroom or being elected.
So I'll just not answer the question. How does that sound, Michael? I'll just not answer the question. Or actually, it was 2 questions about Tiananmen Square and the weapons issue. Strahan does follow up a little bit about not being able to tell the truth about himself.
But it's one of the things of trust. So there are going to be some people who say, we can't trust him to even tell the truth about himself.
Yeah.
What do you say to them?
Well, I said they know who I am. I know who I am. I know the work that I've done. I know that things get spun in a political environment. But I think what they see is, if they want to compare that talking about immigration policy or seeing the things that Donald Trump would say, I think there's a big difference than missing a date when you're there. And again, spinning something for a political reason. I'm very clear of who I've been. I'm very proud of 24 years of doing that work. And I think going to Congress and working for veterans, they want to see it and make the difference, look a little different. I think people in Minnesota, my students, the folks I've worked with, members of Congress, they know who I am.
So I'm just not going to answer the question again. Even if you try to ask me twice, I'm just not going to answer the question. So there's the part of the friendly interview that becomes friendly. It's Strahan doing his duty, so to speak. I'll just ask this question, but I'm not going to care whether or not Tim Walz actually answers it or not. Here's another one.
And Vice President Harris said that she told you to be a little bit more careful on how you say things.
Well, I did it, even the other day of just speaking passionately about these gun violence situations and meeting with these survivors. I've sat in the room with the Sandy Hook folks, a friend with David Hogg, who's been an activist on this. People know in that, and then that gets spun in that, well, he didn't say something true. It was very clear that I was talking about these veterans, very clear that I wear, I wear my emotions on my sleeve, and I do think in these positions, whether it be governor or being vice president of the United States, you do need to be careful.
Yeah, I wear my emotions on my sleeve, so I'm going to say I befriended school shooters. And then, of course, there is this issue we talked about yesterday, and that is with Walz saying he wants to abolish the Electoral College. And Strahan's like, is that something that Kamala Harris supports, or what's up with you?
Tuesday. She said, I think all of us know the Electoral College needs to go. But the campaign came out later that night, and they said that's not their stance.
Yeah. Well, it's not the campaign's position. And the point I'm trying to make is that there's folks that feel every vote must count in every state. Mm-hmm. And I think some of folks feel that's not the case.
Well, it doesn't matter what you feel. And here we go again with, well, I feel that the votes aren't represented by the Electoral College, and the reality is they absolutely are. Every vote is counted. The founding fathers determined that the way we are going to elect presidents is through the Electoral College process and not the popular vote. But that doesn't mean that every vote doesn't count. It means that every vote, in fact, does count. It just goes into the process of doling out electoral votes from each state. So it doesn't matter whether people feel it's unjust. I mean, feelings are not facts, as we all know, right?
Campaign does that. And the point I'm saying is, I'm in 5 states in 2 days. We're out there making the case that the campaign's position is clear, that that's not their position. Their position and my position is to make sure that everybody understands their vote, no matter what state they're in, matters.
So that's something that you and Vice President Harris disagree on?
I have spoken about it in the past, that she's been very clear on this, and the campaign, and my position is the campaign's position.
Yeah, okay. Well, then your position is not to abolish the Electoral College. And anybody who talks like that is either uneducated or, in my opinion, un-American. That's just the way it is. All right, coming up, people, we're going to talk over Amendment 3. It's one of many constitutional amendments on the ballot coming up on the 5th of November. We're also going to talk about Donald Trump, and you should see what he did for some people who are helping the victims of the hurricane down there in Florida. So that's going to be another example of a guy who doesn't talk, he does. And also, speaking of the hurricanes, we've got all the people now wandering around talking about the global warming impact and that tie to the latest hurricane, even though it's hurricane season. Ron DeSantis just absolutely humiliated a reporter trying to do that. And Bill Nye, the science guy, is back too. So we're going to have a little fun with that here on this Fancy Friday. In the meantime, thank you, Rodney and Jen Wallner of the Wallner home selling team. These guys are fantastic. Rodney and Jen, great friends of mine. Just got an invitation to the Angels Arms fundraiser that's happening in November. That's a charity that is near and dear to Jen Wallner, who was a foster child herself, and she has dedicated herself, and so has Rodney, to helping Angels Arms, which is helping foster kids and families and beyond. So it's really amazing. They put their money where their mouth is as it relates to the community and also as it relates to getting your home sold. So they have a bunch of people who are all chomping at the bit to buy a home. And so when you go to them, 314-810-SOLD, and you want your home sold, they're going to have it done lickety-splickety for you, and sometimes even at the highest price you're going to get, because they create kind of a bidding war for your house. They know how to do this. They've been doing it for years, and they know all the ins and outs of the real estate market. And also want to remind you that there's no bad time to show your house. There's no bad time to sell your house, because when you've got rock stars like Rodney and Jen Wallner on your side, you can't go wrong. They also do not stick you with any kind of contract in any way, shape, or form. So that is awesome as well. It's the Wallner home selling team, 314-810-SOLD, 314-810-SOLD.
You're listening to the Allman Report on NewsTalkSTL.
Good evening, everyone, and happy Friday. Fancy Friday for all of you. If you know the Allman brand every Friday, good morning and evening this evening, everyone. Wow, this is always so impressive. You see these people who are struggling under the thumb of FEMA as it continues to slow walk the recovery process and then come up with solutions like in North Carolina. Oh, I know what we'll do, the election officials. We'll just go to the shelters and register people. We'll bring ballots with us, and they can vote on the ballots, and then we'll take them back in a van. It'll be great. It's like, no, that doesn't seem right. It seems rife with the possibility of corruption. And so can you imagine how crafty someone can be? Like, well, we're not gonna work to open polls, polling places so people can go physically vote. We're not going to even clear the roads. What we're going to do is we're going to come up with a plan where we have these voting teams dispatched from Raleigh-Durham and other Democrat strongholds, and they're going to go to the shelters and make sure people can vote. Oh, seems like a trap to me and a setup to me. I wouldn't trust these people. And plus, we're just going to bring the polling places to them. That's what we'll do. We'll bring the mail-in ballots, we'll drop them off for them. It's like, no way. Oh, Lord. Anyway, really nice to see President Trump and his family helping 275 linemen, and these are from the Florida Power and Light Company, who, a lot of times these guys have to, stay at a crummy little Super 8 or Days Inn or whatever. Not to crack on those are fine hotels, but you know what I'm saying. And they've got to make it all themselves, and sometimes they have to pay out of their own pocket and everything else because they're getting reimbursed from the company 6 months from now or whatever. So Donald Trump gave the linemen 275 rooms at his resort in Miami, Florida, the Doral Resort. And they were all in this room giving out their room assignments. They're at the resort. It's a beautiful resort, by the way. And they're all getting their room keys and headed up to luxury. Good for them. I mean, I'm sure for these amazing linemen, they're like thinking, you know what? Maybe I won't go out and work. No, I'm not saying that, but that's another bit of generosity and action Jackson that Donald Trump is all about. All right, here's another. I love bringing you these little pieces of anecdotal evidence that the Make America Great Again generation is going to excel in the 2024 election. And it's not just in the formulation of the White House. It's also in the formulation of Congress, namely the U.S. Senate. I feel bad for some of these House Republicans. I don't really feel bad for them as much as I know that they're not working very hard. How many House Republicans have you seen out there with any kind of muscularity supporting Donald J. Trump and supporting the Make America Great Again message? In many cases, they just kind of stand on the sidelines. They don't really get their hands dirty. You don't really ever see them. And then you hear them complain about how, well, we might lose the House. It's like, well, if we lose the House, it's going to be your fault, not Donald Trump's fault. It was the same way they blamed him when we didn't get the red wave, And it's like, no, we didn't get the red wave back in 2022 because we had a bunch of Republicans talking about bringing back an abortion ban. Lindsey Graham, 6 weeks before the election, screwed us all. And so you didn't get the red wave that we desperately needed, but it wasn't Trump's fault. It was theirs. Anyway, this is coming again from CNN. So Harry Enton, he's a guy, his name, Steve Kornacki over at NBC, Harry Enton, these guys are all number crunchers who basically ruin the dreams of these liberal anchors. And so Here we have Caitlin Collins, and she has him on the air basically saying his numbers are showing that it's a strong likelihood that Republicans are going to win the Senate.
Tonight is CNN's senior political data reporter, Harry Enton. Harry, this is like, I mean, I get it. We all care about who's going to win the presidency, sure, but this also matters because if Harris wins and she's a Republican Senate, that's going to change her cabinet. If Trump wins and he's a Republican Senate, he'll be kind of, unrestrained.
Run roughshod, right?
What races are you watching that are the most critical when it comes to the path
give us the numbers.
to keeping it for Dems?
Right. You mentioned West Virginia. Adios, goodbye. Joe Manchin retiring. That's going to the Republicans. Then essentially you have these three races that I've been keeping an eye on. Montana, obviously, John Tester trailing in the polling, right? What do we see? Texas, Florida, both out today, two different polls out. What do we see? Republicans ahead there. The bottom line is Democrats have to win one of those seats most likely in order to maintain control. And they're not really all that close in any of them. And I think that really paints the picture. It's dire times for Democrats who want to keep Senate control. At this particular hour, when it comes to the House, Senate, presidential, I feel most confident saying that the Senate is most likely going Republican.
I mean, that's a big deal. That's a great deal. That is warming the cockles of our hearts here. And again, if President Trump is elected, which I think he will be, having that Senate Republican is going to be absolutely incredible. And of course, Enton is pointing out that, well, you're getting to this point where now you've got West Virginia with Manchin retiring. He says it's almost assuredly going to go Republican. And Tester in Montana is probably going to be defeated as well. And that was shocking when he was elected in the first place and reelected as well. But at this point, the mood in the country has changed. It's going to manifest itself in these Senate races.
And Trump is up in those states right now. And so that's the question of what these other seats that everyone's been watching closely. Pennsylvania, of course, Ohio, looking at these. Anything that you're focusing on?
I mean, the real question is Donald Trump going to win in those states? Because what you looked at those three other states we looked at, Donald Trump's ahead in all of them. And we know over the course of the Trump presidency, right, in 2016 and 2020, when you have a presidential race and a Senate race going on the same time, pretty much every single time, except for one time, the state voted the same way in the Senate and presidential race. The only time it didn't was Maine back in 2020. Of course, Susan Collins won that race despite the fact that Joe Biden won in the great state of Maine.
So the trends are there. And it's just another. And again, the only thing we have to worry about is corruption in the electoral process. A lot of it local. We're seeing some examples of people already trying to jinx up the system. And we're seeing it with flood recovery. I know they're going to slow roll that recovery in Florida as well. And so we'll see how it all goes. But right now, the trends are Republican across the board in the country. And that can only be good news for the United States of America. All right. Also on the ballot is Amendment 3. You're starting to see a lot of signs pop up. Yes on Amendment 3, no on Amendment 3. We've got a rock star who's going to tell you exactly what this Amendment 3 is all about and what it will actually do for or against our babies. So we'll figure it out right after this on the Allman Report. Happy Friday, everybody.
You're listening to the Allman Report on News Talk STL.
Good evening, everyone. Happy Friday to all of you and yours. And I got to tell you, this next guest of ours is incredible. She's a fighter on behalf of the unborn, a fighter on behalf of our Constitution with the Thomas More Society, which is, I can't wait to ask her more about that because they are, what a great organization. Mary Catherine Martin, rock star, is going to lay it out for us right now on what exactly Amendment 3 is. So I've seen the signs, Mary Catherine, for the yes or the no. And I was talking to you before we hit air here, and you were talking about some of the yes people might even be confused about what Amendment 3 really is. So welcome to the program. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me, Jamie. And I would say that your statement is more true than you think. And it's not just the yes people. What we're dealing with Amendment 3. Now, first of all, I'm the lawyer that was in the Supreme Court arguing that it violated various election laws and shouldn't be on the ballot. And the trial court found that they blatantly violated election laws by not disclosing what the amendment actually does to voters. And 3 out of the 7 Supreme Court justices agreed. So when I say that we don't know what the amendment does, it's not our fault. We have been lied to about it. But the most important lie that the ACLU is telling is one that we're just repeating over and over again on our side. And that's why it's going to win. And that is that this is an abortion law. This is not an abortion law. It does horrific things to our abortion laws. But what it does to abortion, it does to, and I want everybody to note this phrase, it does to, this is a quote, to all matters relating to reproductive health care, period. There is no limitation. We are not part of a trend. Most other states dealing with reproductive freedom amendments, et cetera, it's narrowed to pregnancy care. Or my favorite comparison, abortion law like the one in Florida.
Yeah.
This is the law in Florida that deals with abortion. This is an abortion law. This is Amendment 3, abortion law, ACLU Christmas list. Okay. It creates a super right, not just to abortion, but to all matters relating to reproductive health care. That's things that are named in the amendment, things that are not named that we already know relate to reproductive health care, including multiple things Missouri bans, like cloning, IVF for research, female genital mutilation on children, and the big attention-getting one, children's gender transitions. And then it also includes things that have not yet been discovered. The most troubling applications of Amendment 3 are all matters relating to reproductive health care that we haven't even thought of yet. Those will walk into Missouri on a red carpet and be crowned queen of our Constitution. We will have no control over whether they are permitted in Missouri. They are pre-approved under Amendment 3. And that is what's terrifying about it. Now, it is awful that it does that to abortion. It's horrific what it does to abortion, that it protects it at that level and allows it in all 9 months of health care. Everything people are saying about it that it does to abortion, it does do to abortion. But there are so many more other reasons to object to Amendment 3 that voters are not getting a chance to consider because we are just talking about abortion.
Yeah, that is incredible. And especially since a lot of these interests, even when you mentioned cloning, even though Missourians already defeated cloning.
Oh, it's in our Constitution. It's banned.
Yeah, so how, I need to get in a little bit of that legal weed with you because that to me in itself, the cloning aspect, if it's already in the Constitution, you can't just take that away with some kind of, I know it's an amendment, I get it, but it doesn't seem like you can just take that away. But more importantly, a lot of those things you listed, including the things that we don't know yet are coming, are all kind of going to become a hot ground from people outside of the state to come here and use us for all of their dastardly anti-life needs and desires.
Absolutely. Missouri is going to go from the least hospitable state in the country for reproductive experiments to the most hospitable state in the country for reproductive experiments. Okay, let that sink in. But when you say the legal weeds, let's talk about that. This, I have a document here that I'm offering to your listeners. This is a document for people who want to be experts in Amendment 3. And when we go and vote, we are the lawmakers on any constitutional amendment or any initiative petition. We're the lawmakers. So it's actually your responsibility to become an expert in Amendment 3, right? But I know that your listeners, Jamie, are people who like to be experts. They like to know more than everybody else around them and be able to inform other people. That's what this is for. It is a one-page annotated amendment. The actual amendment is on here with actual breakouts of where it says everything. Because the other lie the ACLU is telling and winning with is, well, we can't know. Where does it say that?
Yeah, right.
Okay, so where does it say that? They've won 4 lawsuits with, we're just not sure. Which, if you think about it, Jamie, is a really strange thing to say about something you want people to vote for. Vote for Amendment 3. We're not sure what it's going to do. Okay, we do know some things. Okay, there are speculative statements going on out there. I tell people, stop talking just about abortion. Talk about the other certain effects. And you don't need to go into speculation because there's enough right on this page, right exactly in the language of the amendment for anyone to oppose this amendment.
Yeah.
Okay, the legal weed we're talking about here is that we will all, including children, have a new right to reproductive freedom, which is the right to make and carry out decisions about, and again, these are the most important words in the amendment, and soon to be the most important words in our entire Constitution, all matters relating to reproductive health care. All matters relating to reproductive health care. After that, it says, including but not limited to, and lists 7 examples, 5 of which no human has ever opposed, and 2 are abortion and contraception. Okay, so 7 examples, but including but not limited to is legal speak for you can disregard everything I'm about to say because there's definitely other things, right? This does not define the category. Including but not limited to, the Supreme Court has held, contemplates future inclusions heretofore unconsidered. Okay, so you can ignore those 7 examples. Now, we would never ignore abortion, but certainly we don't need to stay in the field of those examples. The unnamed children of this amendment are much scarier. Just as if I were to say to you, I have children, including 2 sons. Is it unclear to you whether my daughters are included?
Yeah, right.
It is not unclear. Okay, it's not unclear. It's not ambiguous. Stop letting them win with, we can't know. It's not named, so we can't know. No, yes, we can. If it's in a matter relating to reproductive health care, this legalizes it, protects it more highly than any other right in your Constitution, eliminates the parent's right to interfere with the autonomous decision-making of their children on it, and in some cases, funds it. If it is any matter relating to reproductive health care.
Talking to Mary Catherine Martin with the Thomas More Society. And Mary Catherine, the other thing about this, which is odd, is the language itself. Reproductive health care. We've and that's been something that's been applied to abortion rights, and they call abortion reproductive health care. And so they've managed to include that euphemism, that phony term in the amendment. And everybody said, well, we love health care. Remember they called, Obamacare. Well, do you support health care or are you against health care? It's like, well, I'm for healthcare, but but again, it's that playing around with that language, and as a lawyer, language is important.
As in what about in subsection 6 where they prohibit discrimination? I don't like discrimination, Jamie. Do you like discrimination?
No.
Okay, but the discrimination they're prohibiting here is the discrimination of the state in having funding for pregnancy and funding for other reproductive health care. That's where it funds. In all state benefit programs and insurance programs. And they admitted this in court. It's on the record in the summary statement trial that they are aiming to fund with taxpayer money abortion, which it doesn't say abortion. It says reproductive health care. So where there's pregnancy coverage by the state, there will also be funding for all reproductive health care. Now, that one doesn't say all matters. It has to be health care there. But as you rightly point out, the argument that something that does not encourage reproduction is not reproductive health care is long in the rear view. Yeah. Right? Those types of reproductive health care are actually anti-reproductive. Okay. Yeah. So I would say, again, we all have to put ourselves in the place of a judge interpreting this in order to vote on what we think it's going to include, right? A judge interpreting this who sees that reproductive health care includes, but is not limited to, both abortion and contraception, is not free to define health care as something that prolongs life or deals with actual reproduction or just, and then let me just say the scariest thing about our amendment versus others. It doesn't say reproductive health care, Jamie. It says all matters relating to reproductive health care. Now, a judge, again, not free to interpret a sentence with two phrases the same way that it would interpret just reproductive health care. So all matters relating to has to add something to the meaning. So all matters relating to reproductive health care versus just reproductive health care means we've got everything that involves reproduction. Okay, so now you're talking about, that's where we can be absolutely certain that this covers things like IVF or stem cell research, right? May not be health care, but is it a matter relating to reproductive health care? Well, since it uses medical manipulation of the reproductive organs, yes, it's a matter relating to reproductive health care. Female genital mutilation, is it health care? I hope not.
No,
Okay.
don't call it that, though.
But is it a matter relating to that woman's reproductive health care? Yes.
Yeah.
And this is where they cannot deny. And I have not yet. I hear that they are now starting to deny, starting to say, we didn't mean gender transitions. We've been waiting for months to hear them say that definitively. Never once in court, never given every opportunity, never have they said, oh, not gender transitions. But it sounds like they're starting to see that people are waking up to the full meaning and they're starting to react. And so they're going to tell us what they meant.
Yeah.
That's totally unhelpful, right? Because this is the law we'll be stuck with. And it says all matters relating to reproductive health care. Please, Jamie, try to make an argument. And I'm going to have to. I'll be the lawyer arguing it, okay? But please argue to me how gender transition surgeries, exchanging your genitals for those or the simulacra of different ones, is not a matter relating to reproductive health care.
And no wonder, Mary Catherine Martin, they want to make this about abortion because if you talk to some pro-life people, and maybe I'm making assumptions that aren't there, but if you talk to pro-choice people, I would think that a lot of people, even those who support abortion rights, would not support these other things on that list. So they're more than happy to make this about abortion. So people go to the polls thinking, I'm going to preserve abortion rights. And then they have no idea what else they're actually preserving or opening the door to.
We are still getting the argument in canvassing. We're still getting the argument, the same old argument. I don't personally agree with abortion, but I don't want to limit other people's rights to choose. Oh, how about limiting your own child's right to choose? I bet you want to limit your own child's right to choose all matters relating to reproductive health care. I bet no parent in Missouri wants to lose the ability to guide their child's health care.
Right.
And that's in here. It's absolutely in here. If you do not believe me, look up this sheet. It's highlighted. You can see exactly where they say it. Okay. It's not spoken in exact words the way a normal person would speak. Okay. That's why I put this up on the web and on your website. And that's why I printed it, and people are printing it everywhere. Someone's going to put it in a paper. There's passing it out, because the response to them not naming all the subjects cannot be, well, we'll just talk about the one you named. That can't be it. I mean, their signs say we're ending Missouri's abortion ban, and our signs also say they're ending Missouri's abortion ban. We should be concerned that our signs say the same thing theirs do.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
So why are we not talking about these other subjects? The answer is not to say, well, we just don't have credibility if we talk about these other things. The answer is to become credible.
Right.
Fast. One page.
And again, appeal to those people out there, even in the pro-choice community.
That's right.
Who don't even have any idea, and maybe don't even care, but they don't have any idea what they're signing off on, as you point out, even the parental permission thing. And again, I think, yeah, you can have your opinions about abortion, but most normal, common sense people would not want many of those things on that list. I mean, seriously,
there is a reason
cloning included.
Us on abortion.
Yeah.
There's a reason. And it is because everything else is so much worse and so much less supported. And it's not just in the pro-choice community. We've got all these nice pro-life people Oh, this is my least favorite. This is the thing that hurts me the most as a pro-life attorney. Isn't this what you wanted? Yay, we get to vote on abortion after Dobbs.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that to hear our 50 years of effort to try to, I can hear it being flushed down the toilet with Amendment 3 and people asking me, isn't this what I wanted? They are so confused.
Yeah.
People are so confused by this narrative that 13 states are riding the tide after Dobbs and voting about abortion. Oh no, this is a vote to never vote again.
Yeah.
Yep. Not just abortion like under Roe versus Wade, but every matter relating to reproductive health care now and undiscovered. It's a shocking level of just misinformation. And so the only response is to learn the information and be motivated by it. We've also got a whole group of voters who, I don't know if you've heard this, Jamie, but there are a lot of people out there who find some of the other things on the ballot distasteful.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So they don't want to vote.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. They're going to let Missouri do what they think Missouri's going to do. And if it's abortion, they think Missouri's just going to take care of abortion. We always do.
Right.
Right. And so they're not going to go because they don't know we need their votes. They're even against abortion, but they're just not going to go.
So
we need them to go.
Mary Catherine Martin, great points. And if you don't mind, I'm going to hold you over if you don't mind, because I need to ask you a couple questions since you brought it up regarding Dobbs and the constitutionality of this amendment, even if it passes in existence, but also the reality that you guys have to understand, this amendment came out of nowhere because of initiative petitions. And this came out, and I want to find out who's behind this, because here's what happened. Your Missouri legislature had no say in this whatsoever. And it's because of the initiative petition process that absolutely has to go. So, Mary Catherine Martin, appreciate you standing by just for a few more questions I want to be able to ask you, and I know you can answer. And so I really appreciate your time and the enlightenment. Lord, thank you so much for that. So we'll be back here on this Friday night on the Allman Report with Mary Catherine Martin from the Thomas More Society. We'll see you just in a few.
You're listening to the Allman Report on News Talk STL.
Welcome back on this Friday evening to the Allman Report, and back with Mary Catherine Martin from the Great Thomas More Society. She is sounding the alarm over Amendment 3, and what is even more mind-blowing is the reality that even some of the people who are doing the yes on Amendment 3 might not have all that they need to have in terms of educating themselves on exactly what is in it, what have you, and no on Amendment 3 even possibly don't even understand what this is all about, because it is not just about abortion. So there's got to be some type of messaging in the last 3 weeks or so here where especially those of us in the pro-life community can get the word out, and Mary Catherine Martin is doing just that. So I really appreciate your time here. One of the things I wanted to ask you about is who actually concocted this? So we have an initiative petition process that allows for amendments to be put on the ballot without any kind of involvement of the state legislature. So if you get enough signatures and get enough this or that, you can put anything on the ballot. And some people might be able to defend that, and I would understand that. But the reality is you kind of get what you pay for, and this is kind of what happens when you take the power away from the legislature. Because also what happens is a lot of people who are activists around the country take advantage of that process. So they'll drop in, and believe me, when it comes to some of these other things on the Amendment 3, you'll have some outside forces come in and feed off of the approval of those things. And then, as Mary Catherine Martin pointed out earlier, we'll just become a hotbed of a bunch of life experimentation that we absolutely do not want. All this money will be pouring in, and so we'll just be one horrible petri dish for all these people who want to manipulate lives and bodies and life. Mary Catherine Martin, so the initiative petition process, who is actually behind Amendment 3? Like, who started this? Like, how did this come about that it's on the ballot now?
Well, the ACLU has defended it and has defended its putative drafter, who I believe is an abortionist. She's a doctor. But lawyers for the ACLU wrote this, and they've defended it in all 4 pre-election lawsuits, 2 of which were against me. So I can give you names, but I don't think I really need to. It's the ACLU. Now, I will say, when it was the fiscal note summary, it was us versus the ACLU. That was 15 months ago. When we challenged based on election failures, the pre-election review and them not satisfying the requirements for initiative petitions, it was 2 ACLU lawyers and 2 private lawyers from downtown St. Louis who have some expertise. After we beat them on a Friday night at 8 p.m., by Monday at noon, when we entered our briefs in the Supreme Court, there were 11 lawyers against us. Another private law firm had been hired that specializes in initiative petitions. And those lawyers wrote an entire new set of arguments that all involved the law not applying to this particular case. And also just, heartfelt pleas for all the effort that had gone in and all the signers and the rights of all these people, as opposed to the rights of Missouri citizens to have the law followed and to understand what they're voting on, which is the rights that had been violated. And the Supreme Court ended up siding with them. And one of their main arguments was, we didn't write on the signature. They didn't even say they didn't know the requirement. They said, we didn't write on the signature pages what we were repealing because we didn't want to confuse Missouri voters. And the trial court called them out and said that actually is not a defense to following the law. But the Supreme Court bought it. That wasn't dispositive, but they added it just a little and by the way, we also think they're right. That would have been confusing. Well, thank you, Supreme Court.
Yeah.
So now we don't have that requirement anymore. But so the initiative petition process, it was initiated by the ACLU.
Yeah. And they took advantage of this, and there have been places and people. Bill Eigel was one of them who said, when I'm elected governor, we're going to get rid of this. And of course, it comes through the Secretary of State as well. And that's important too. Jay Ashcroft was only following the the law, so he's not to blame for this being on there, but it would run through the Secretary of State's office. He'd block that, and that's the end of it. So as it relates to the Supreme Court and Mary Catherine Martin, I don't understand how, given the Dobbs decision, and I guess I'd have to know exactly what the Dobbs decision said about state legislatures involved with the abortion laws, because this could not have been the intent of the Supreme Court in overturning Roe versus Wade to bounce this back to some monolithic constitutional amendment. Wasn't it? Did they specifically say that now it's up to the legislatures in each state to determine laws regarding life?
The Supreme Court in Dobbs was only considering Roe versus Wade and whether the power grab in Roe versus Wade, by imagining a right to abortion in the federal Constitution, which took away states' rights, was authentic and actually in the federal Constitution. And they found, to our great relief, after 50 years, for all the same reasons we've been saying for 50 years, that it wasn't legitimate. And so there was no such right in the federal Constitution. Now, the effect of Dobbs, I don't actually remember if they specifically discussed states, but it wouldn't be binding anyway. It would have been total dicta, right? It's not their business what we do as states. But the effect of Dobbs was always going to be that states regulated abortion before Roe versus Wade, and states can regulate abortion afterwards. Now, the regulations we have normally on all issues go through the legislature and our normal laws. Okay. And they can be repealed and amended, and they usually are on one thing at a time. Like our current abortion ban, there is one final law that kind of seals up all the gaps. We have like 100 laws on abortion regulating the different ways that people who seek an abortion need to be cared for and protected from making the wrong decision. We have a viability law. We have a consent law, parental consent. We have notification laws. We have waiting period laws, right? They come a little bit at a time and they go through the legislature and they get passed, et cetera. Okay. This is not what anyone was, let's just say, this is not what anyone was working towards under Dobbs, right?
Yeah.
And trying to get Roe reversed, we were trying to be able to make that kind of law, right? That states would have the liberty to limit, consider and limit or grant access to abortion. And we weren't, Dobbs only had to do with abortion, but other reproductive technologies already were in this position where if something comes in the gate, voters consider it, the legislature represents voters in passing a law, and we set the terms for how it's available in Missouri. One thing at a time.
Yeah.
Okay. And this is nothing that was even remotely related to Dobbs. It's just opportunism. There's a trend toward voting on abortion now because everyone's talking about voting on abortion after Dobbs, and they're taking advantage of the ignorance of voters to pretend that this is what we're talking about. A constitutional amendment is not a vote on abortion or any other issue. It is a vote to go back to never voting again. It is a vote to, you get these people who are saying falsely, really former judges saying all this does is bring about Roe versus Wade. No, but if it did, that would be bad enough. Okay. But, Roe versus Wade took away our right to vote at the federal level. This does take away our right to vote at the state level. That's not okay. That doesn't make it okay. Right. But it also sets up a right that in our state constitution is much broader. Again, it's not abortion. It's all matters relating to reproductive health care. And it moves that right higher than the other fundamental rights, which that was never part of.
Yeah. Well,
this is a much higher right because it cannot be infringed upon for the sake of anyone else in society. Your other rights can be limited. If the state has a compelling interest in me or my health care or the public safety or even you.
Yeah.
Right? The state can say you can't do that. But this law, and you'll see in this thing, it has a provision, subsection 3, that says no limitations that have to do with anybody except the person receiving care. And even you can't pass something that's for their good if it limits their autonomous decision making. And that's where we lose the parent.
Yeah. Well, and Mary Catherine, and this might sound like a dumb question, but I'm just thinking, can a constitutional amendment at the state level erase a federally protected constitutional amendment known as the 10th. So can a state actually erase its own sovereign 10th Amendment right with a ballot initiative like this?
The state can do whatever it wants to its own constitution. And the later, the impact of the later one would then supervene the earlier constitutional amendment, and a court would have to decide what the overlap is and how much is now obviated by the new. They did find definitively that none of our constitutional rights, even, and this is amazing, even our absolute ban on cloning and on IVF for stem cell research, which are constitutional, the Supreme Court did find, as a matter of law, that those are not repealed by this amendment, which is amazing because this amendment makes them presumed invalid. And then makes it impossible to pass them again. So that's pretty repealed.
Yeah.
That's like saying someone's knocked out and you're on count 9 and it hasn't gotten to 10 yet, so it's not repealed, right? It's just...
Could a state legislature collectively sue claiming that its 10th Amendment federal constitutional right has been erased by this initiative? Like, could a state legislature say, you just took away the state's 10th Amendment sovereignty? I don't know. I mean,
it could if it weren't for the fact that the initiative petition process is provided for in the Constitution.
Okay, gotcha.
In the state constitution, right? So circumventing the legislature is provided for in our state constitution. Well, I think you have identified here, though, one of the reasons that Missouri, it's easy to look around and go, why would they come here? We're the most pro-life state in the country, right? I mean, we have the most restrictive abortion laws. One, that I'm sure that makes them want to release that. But also, you'd think they would find the least sympathetic voting population. Well, first of all, if they fool us and make us vote for something that we don't understand, that doesn't matter, right? How pro-life we are or how against these other technologies we are doesn't matter if we don't understand they're at stake, okay? But secondly, I think that they've taken a bet when they look at people's initiative petition processes, which are different in every state. Not everyone has them. And some people who have them, you need 60%. Missouri has 50% plus one voter. 50% plus one voter to amend the Constitution, which is why we have so many constitutional amendments proposed every year on our ballots.
Right.
Right. And I mean, and when we say we need reform, look, this was conceived of in like 1909. OK, that's when we got initiative petitions. Back then, we did not have George Soros and Bloomberg and, Swedish millionaires, is what I've heard, or something, pouring money. We didn't have television ads. We didn't have the kind of manipulation of voters and we didn't have the ACLU going, well, we would follow the laws, but we just don't want to confuse everybody. Right. I mean, we just were not such easy targets back then. Whatever communication happened about this would have been, much more authentic and much more even-handed. So I don't know if it's outlived its
right.
It's now more open to manipulation than serving the needs of our population.
Totally true. Well, Mary Catherine Martin, thank you so much for your time and your brilliance and your fight and your enthusiasm and passion for getting the truth out about this. I will take the one sheet you've showed there already. I'll put that on the Facebook page as a separate post so you all can save it, have it, spread it around, and work.
Print it out and put it at the doors of your church.
Right. Just on.
Put a stack of them at the doors of your church, okay? And have it in your purse.
Yeah.
That's what I've learned.
Okay.
Nobody believes you. You got to have it in your purse, pockets, man, so that you can say, oh, you don't believe me? Look.
Right on. I appreciate that. Thank you so much for that. And thank you so much for all the time you've been able to spend, which is very, very enlightening and educating.
The donors of the Thomas More Society, they've really done a lot for Missouri in this case.
Oh, haven't they, though?
I mean, 2 of the 4 pre-election lawsuits, and I'm just very grateful to them.
Yep. Whenever the going gets rough as it relates to the Constitution, and just when you think that we have no hope, the Thomas More Society always steps in bravely. And so if you can help the Thomas More Society yourselves, go to the webpage. It's thomasmoresociety.org, right?
And 10. More has 10.
And there's a chance that there's a little place there that you can obviously donate to the organization because that's what is necessary in this fight. So thank you very much, Mary Catherine Martin. Appreciate you as always.
Thank you, Jamie, so much.
Thank you. That's amazing stuff, people. I mean, it's amazing what you don't know about some of these things that are on the ballot that everybody's talking about, everybody's posting signs about, but the truth just isn't really there. But it will be if we just keep shouting it out. So thank you very much for that. This is the Allman Report on News Talk STL.
You're listening to the Allman Report on News Talk STL.
Good evening, everyone. Happy Friday to all of you. You know, I hope you got something out of that rather lengthy talk with Mary Catherine Martin. I think oftentimes, and that's the beauty of having a forum like this, is that we can kind of get into the weeds, because this is important stuff, and it is nothing short of shocking what is in that amendment, but also nothing short of shocking regarding the confusion that many people have, so including the pro-life community, who is in some case misidentifying what this is and saying that, you know, this will help us in our abortion fight. But the reality is it's not what we need. We need other formulations of continuing our states' rights and not having them taken away from us. So this is a pretty big deal, and I really appreciate the time that we've been able to spend with this. All right, so this junk science stuff, I'm so happy that we have people like Ron DeSantis out there who doesn't take any crap from idiots who talk about global warming and everything else. MSNBC, of course, trots out Bill Nye, the science guy, Mr., I'm wearing a bow tie, so therefore I'm smarter than everybody else.
The other side, as we often call it, has no plans to address climate change, no plans for long-term dealing with these sorts of problems. If you have young voters out there, encourage them to vote. People say, what can I do about climate change? If we were talking about it, associating it with big storms like this, that would be really good. But the main thing is vote. Thank you.
Yeah. In other words, vote for Kamala Harris and Tim Walz. And so you have Bill Nye, the science guy, deciding that he's going to use the misery of individuals in North Carolina, in Eastern Tennessee, and Georgia, and Florida to basically politic for a non-existent problem, and that is global warming's role in creating hurricanes and tornadoes that have been around for ages. And one quick thing, I do know that there are some people out there talking about the possibility or throwing it out there that there was some kind of cloud seeding going on and all this other stuff. And I don't believe that. I do know that it's very highly unusual to have as many tornadoes as we had, but this storm was an unusually strength storm, and those tornadoes were oddly similar to Plain States tornadoes and not necessarily tornadoes they've seen in Florida before. I think there were like 75 tornadoes. And I think tornadoes killed the majority of the people who were killed as a result of Milton. So there's a thing there. I'm just not sure that the tornadoes were created by, but listen, weather patterns are crazy. Like I told you, when I was a kid, I remember very distinctly 1970 something, seeing a Time magazine with the headline, The Coming Ice Age. So come on. These people are so flimsy and so reckless in throwing these scientific things around that are totally not related to the truth. And it's just sad when you have somebody like Bill Nye who has decided he's going to exploit the misery of people to promote his own agenda and political agenda. And then we had Ron DeSantis, who is a one-man wrecking ball especially when it comes to these idiot reporters who try to ask him questions about things. And I love the fact that he's so precise and he's so detailed. And the one thing I do like about Ron DeSantis that was maybe annoying when he was running against Donald Trump is his snarkiness and his deadpan approach to things. And it's always really super hilarious when he's that way to people we don't like. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like when we like hate a baseball player because he's so good for the other team, but then when he comes to our team, we're like, yeah, I love that. So I like this a lot.
Tornadoes?
Yeah, it's increasing tornadoes.
I think you could go back
tornado. And this is where in this one report, global warming. You think the tornadoes are related to global warming? And he's like, tornadoes.
Global warming.
Tornadoes?
Yeah, it's increasing tornadoes.
I think you could go back and find tornadoes for all of human history for sure, and especially Florida. How does this storm rate in kind of the history of storms? I think it hit with a barometric pressure of about 950 millibars when it hit. Which I think if you go back to 1851, there's probably been 27 hurricanes that have had lower so the lower the barometric pressure, the stronger it is. I think there have been about 27 hurricanes that have had lower barometric pressure on landfall than Milton did. And
it's interesting how, this reporter is getting a lot more than he bargained for. And, of course, DeSantis, I have to admire his preparation because he probably knew he was going to get the question. And so he's getting right into it. And I love this about him because it's the way Trump is, too. So you're a reporter. You're just doing kind of a drive-by, dumbass question. And then you're dragged into a long answer with a lot of details in it. And of course, the reporter doesn't want to hear them. It's like, I didn't ask for that much information. I just want to kind of hit you on the global warming thing and leave. But DeSantis is like, no, I want you to sit down. And let's talk about your question, and let's talk about the tornadoes, shall we? And I'm going to lay on you a bunch of stuff, including even meteorological facts and figures, and I'm gonna wear you down with my answer.
Had so the lower the barometric pressure, the stronger it is. I think there have been about 27 hurricanes that have had lower barometric pressure on landfall than Milton did, and of those, 17 occurred, I think, prior to 1960. And the most powerful hurricane on record since the 1850s in the state of Florida occurred in the 1930s, the Labor Day hurricane.
I mean, come on. I mean, and it's true that some of those hurricanes were a little more drastic, not only in their size, but also because at the time, the way buildings and stuff were made wasn't nearly as strong as it is now. So the damage was a lot more. But these hurricanes are what they are. That Labor Day hurricane he's talking about was gigantic. So it wasn't, it did a lot more damage than a normal, like modern day gigantic hurricane would do, just because they weren't prepared for that. But it's so funny. I mean, and I'm sure that this guy who asked the question wouldn't know what barometric pressure was if it came out of the sky and conked him on the head, you know?
Metric pressure on that was 892 millibars. It totally wiped out.
Yeah, he's even going right down to millibars. And actually, the only reason I know the term millibar, and even for that matter, barometric pressure, is I'll never forget this in college at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. I thought that I would take like this thumb-sucking course in meteorology. And I'm like, how difficult could this be? You know, it's like 1981, right? And, you know, I grew up watching weather guys just pasting clouds and suns on a Velcro board, you know? And so I thought, well, how could meteorology be that difficult if I just watch Ali Rahman in his red vest put stuff up on a Velcro board and just say, it's going to be sunny today, high 55 or whatever it is. And I thought, well, how difficult could this be? So I go into class, and it's one of these classes with like 300 kids in it, you know. And this guy starts talking, and plus the professor is some German dude. And I could barely even understand a word he was saying, much less understand math, which I didn't know was involved in meteorology, and having to do subtractions and percentages and do that kind of stuff. I'm going, wait a minute, what is this? Then I started learning about millibars and barometric pressure and how to calculate barometric pressure and adiabats. Look that up. I still don't. I never bother with it. And I wound up getting a D in the class, which I thought I was just going to thumb suck my way through. So be careful sometimes what you wish for. And this reporter is going to wish that he never answered that question.
Barometric pressure on that was 892 millibars. It totally wiped out the Keys. We've never seen anything like it, and that remains head and shoulders above any powerful hurricane that we've ever had in the state of Florida. The most deadly hurricane we've ever had was in 1928. The Okeechobee hurricane killed over 4,000 people. Fortunately, we aren't going to have anything close to that on this hurricane. But even ones like Ian, where you had, wasn't even close to that. So, I just think people should put.
By the way, this answer goes like 3 minutes. And I want you to hear all of it because I want you to hear just how DeSantis just wears idiots down.
Perspective there, they try to take different things that happen with tropical weather and act like it's something. There's nothing new under the sun. This is something that the state has dealt with for its entire history, and it's something that we'll continue to deal with. I think what's changed is we've got 23 million people. A storm that hits is likely to hit more people and property than it would have 100 years ago. And so the potential for that damage has grown. But what's also changed is our ability to do the prevention, to pre-stage the assets. I mean, we never did the pre-staging of power assets until I became governor. Now people expect that, but that wasn't what was done in the past. That's why people would be out with power for 3 weeks when we'd have hurricanes. We thought that that's not good. Now we have to pay to get these guys to come in, but my view is the quicker you get everyone hooked up, the better off the economy is going to be anyway. So why don't we just do that? Having the different search and rescue, having a state guard, all these different things are just bringing different tools to the fight, and it allows us to respond more effectively.
So the reporter by this time is probably left or slunk away, or you're like, okay, well, never mind then. I won't ask Ron DeSantis that question again. All right, we're going to do a little lightning round coming up here on the Allman Report because there's a lot of stuff I want to get to, and including Obama. Oh, Lord. I mean, he's supposedly stumping for Kamala Harris and makes huge mistakes, even to the point of disparaging black men. It's like, good going, black guy. We'll have all that for you on the other side of this. This is the Allman Report on News Talk STL.
You're listening to the Allman Report on News Talk STL.
You guys want to listen to a little Dick Dale? You ever heard of Dick Dale there, young Ethan?
I can't say I have, Jamie.
Dick Dale and his Deltones. So Dick Dale was the guy who basically originated and minted surf music.
I hear it now. I can hear that.
So here's one called the Surf Beat. It's good. A lot of it kind of sounds the same, but he's it's surf music, man. And actually, even a lot of people kind of took a little bit from him. He took a little from other people. The Beach Boys, for instance, get a little bit of that echoey type of sound, especially with pet sounds, And then other people introduced, woodwinds into their guitars and stuff like that. And a little Chuck Berry riff in there occasionally, but Dick Dale was a legend. And I'll never forget, he came to St. Louis once. And I was like, he was old, and I'll see him another time, whatever, and he died, so. I missed out on my Dick Dale. All right, so here's Barack Obama not helping Kamala Harris at all, and he's talking about how I think I've noticed a lot of the black brothers don't seem to like Kamala Harris. It's like, I know, man. Trying to figure that out. Don't have the support that she didn't have the support I had back in the day. You didn't build that. Somebody else made that happen.
Is that we have not yet seen the same kinds of energy and turnout in all quarters of our neighborhoods and communities as we saw when I was running. Now, I also want to say that seems to be more pronounced with the brothers.
Yes, it does. With the brothers. Yeah. I think it looks like the brothers aren't very supportive of Kamala Harris the way they were of me. And it's so funny how this is actually, you notice he's supposedly campaigning for Kamala Harris. Like, and only Barack Obama could possibly make it about him and actually do almost a backhanded insult to Kamala Harris by pointing out that black guys don't seem to like Kamala Harris like they like me. It's like, well, so much for that endorsement, and so much for you campaigning supposedly on behalf of Kamala Harris and deciding you're going to crap all over her in a hallway someplace. And the fact of the matter is, it's true that black men aren't as supportive of Kamala Harris as people expected, which is probably why, to some degree, and I'm not saying only black guys drink Miller High Life, but my experience is that black guys like Miller High Life, the ones I know at least, more than other beers sometimes. And so that's probably why she trotted out a can of it on the Colbert Show. Maybe the black guys will like me if I just drink Miller High Life, even though she never does. And so thanks for nothing, Barack Obama, on that level. Also this, and this is, I need to get to this real quickly, though. So the Catholic Democrats and the media and other people out there, it just seems like whenever you go off on Christians, if you deride any form of Christianity, you're either made into a hero or you, whatever you're doing is you just decide to forego it. You just decide, well, I'm not going to pay attention to it. So the despicable Gretchen Whitmer, the governor of Michigan, decides she's going to go on this podcast show. And this is the same person who was part of the FBI cabal that was invading Catholic churches and things. So she goes and she's doing something in support of some CHIPS event. And so what she does is she has this. She's on this podcast and she makes a video with this harpy who's on her knees. And then Gretchen Whitmer gives her a Dorito simulating the Eucharist. Now, let's put it this way. If you did anything along those lines with any other faith, you would be called a bigot. You would even be called a racist, depending on what religion you were mocking. But for some reason, it's okay to go ahead and mock the Catholic Church. And they mock Christians too. So, and some of you might, have your own ideas about the Holy Eucharist and that kind of thing. But the reality is, regardless of what your ideas are about these certain religions, we should all be very concerned anytime someone will attack a religion or mock a faith. And so even those of us who have problems with Islam or radical Islam, whatever, you don't really necessarily get into the, not many of us at least do, mode of actually mocking certain individuals in the Muslim. I mean, if you did that, my goodness gracious. Hell, you make a cartoon about Muhammad and you'll get shot up. So the fact of the matter is this is just overlooked. Nobody's paying attention to it, but it's a grievous attack on a Christian faith that nobody seems to be talking about at all. When you see the video, it's like, wow, Gretchen Whitmer, it looks like more like a witch. She's wearing a hat, stares at the camera, and hands this, she's got pigtails on and she's on her knees, this Dorito as if she's a priest giving communion to somebody. It's like, oh man, unbelievable. But just another example of how the news media and liberals are disgusting when it comes to protecting certain people of faith from just being outright mocked and destroyed. It's just unbelievable. So anyway, more of the same from Gretchen Whitmer. All right, this is great. And I'll leave you with this tonight because Greg Gutfeld is fantastic. And I'm glad that he decided, because, Howard Stern is someone I used to listen to quite a bit because I really liked, I could do without some of his sexual stuff and some of his more, stripper pole type of stuff like that was always very uncomfortable. But he was a great interviewer and seemed to be a guy that was also apolitical until for some reason, in some way, shape, or form, he suddenly changed into like a radical left dude. And I can't figure out, like Howard Stern used to be very popular with, like middle class guys, working class guys who always listened to him, but he's lost so much of his audience. Maybe he doesn't have to care anymore. I don't know. He's got all the money he needs, so it's not that big of a deal. But on the 5, Greg Gutfeld really went after him, which is great because we all have questions like, dude, how can you be so kissy-uppy to Kamala Harris? And when you've had Trump on the air before, you loved it. In fact, there was a time when I would listen to Stern. He'd have Trump on the air, and Trump would be going after G.W. Bush. And I'd be like, oh, this is annoying, man. Trump's going after G.W. Bush again, and blah, 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 and I get it. But, this guy was friends with Trump. But for some reason, somebody heard him, whatever. Greg Gutfeld just had a hilarious takedown of Howard Stern here.
I mean, talk about a transition. On Tuesday, he conducted an interview with Kamala Harris that was so simpering and feminine, I got my period while listening to it.
Oh, I'm sorry. This was on the Gutfeld show. Sorry, I thought it was on the 5.
You should hear what keeps him up at night.
This is what keeps me up at night. I don't understand how my fellow Americans, I don't even understand how this election is close. And yes, I'm voting for you, but I would also vote for that wall over there.
Well, he's half right. We do need a wall. To keep out gang members, fentanyl dealers, human traffickers, and Anna Navarro. What's funny, though, is that Stern actually thought that was a compliment. Stern has become such a wussified sycophant, he doesn't realize that telling Kamala that he'd vote for a wall is telling her that he knows she's as dumb as one.
You go, Greg.
I mean, not to mention, Trump is the wall candidate, not Cackle's McKnee pads.
Oh, Lord. Ouch.
Stern got even more pathetic, wondering how she doesn't nap.
When you said you don't nap, I get it, because like what you've taken on is extraordinarily difficult. And I mean, do you feel the pressure of the moment in the sense that, like, when I met you out in the hall, I said, I'm really nervous because I want this to go well for you. I want it to go well for the country.
Hold on. I need a minute.
So he had to take a break. Okay, that's enough of that. Ugh. Okay, we get it, Greg.
All right, we're back. Now remember, Stern used to throw bologna slices at strippers' butts. With accuracy, I might add. Now he's worried the possible leader of the free world can't handle his verbal foot rub. I wonder if he used to get this nervous for the strippers before he'd spank them on their bare asses with a dead fish. Here's Stern on anyone daring to poke a little fun at Kamala.
Even when I watch them on Saturday Night Live with the where they have Maya Rudolph playing you, I hate it. I don't want you being made fun of.
Oh my God.
There's too much at stake. I believe the entire future of this country right now. I mean, as America, land of the free, home of the brave, I think it's literally on the line.
So a guy who's supposed to be funny for a living now claims her candidacy is too important to joke about. This is a guy who once joked right after the Columbine massacre that the killers should have raped the students before killing them. Oh. Not that I like that Stern, but this pendulum swing from saying the most tasteless thing in the universe to putting your balls in a Tic Tac container. You got to wonder what's going on here. It's striking that the king of the most misogynistic humor ever now turns into a breathless over a progressive, hopelessly shallow candidate.
Good for you, man. And I love this because you know what's going to happen now is that Stern is either going to, maybe not, but Stern is going to either try to take Greg Gutfeld out on his show or what have you, and that's only going to help Greg Gutfeld because Greg Gutfeld gets higher ratings than Stern does anyway. All right, you guys want more of the J.D. Vance amazingness? I can't go a day without talking to somebody who's like, wow, this J.D. Vance guy is so amazing. And one of the reasons, I have a million reasons why I want Donald Trump to win and why I think he'll win. But also, one of the reasons is also that J.D. Vance will be almost guaranteed to be the next president of the United States, which I am completely and totally comfortable with. So anyway, J.D. Vance is at a town hall in North Carolina. And by the way, with Danica Patrick, the NASCAR racer. But by the way, did you guys notice that when Kamala Harris was doing the Telemundo town hall, there was apparently a teleprompter there. I'm not quite sure whether it was for her or the host. People are all saying it was for her. I don't know that for a fact, but it was there at the town hall. J.D. Vance needed no town hall. And here's how it all went down.
For the federal government, there's a lot of...
Hold on just a second, man. We okay?
Some woman screaming.
Kamala Harris built this platform behind us. That's what happened.
And this woman almost fell, like almost tripped, you know?
We doing okay, ma'am? We good?
You can have my chair if you want.
Go ahead, sir.
I think it's also so cool that J.D. Vance did this with Danica Patrick. So I really like Danica Patrick. She wasn't always like the best NASCAR racer on the planet, you know, caused a lot of accidents and everything else, but she's still beloved in North Carolina. And the fact that he's having this town hall there and the fact that he's so natural and really super easy on his feet, in terms of talking and everything else is just absolutely amazing. As I've always said, he's just a fabulous Robin to Donald Trump's Batman. I love Donald Trump's personality. I love his brashness. I love his honesty and everything else. So I'm not one of those people saying, oh, J.D. Vance really balances Trump's craziness out. It's like, that's not why I like him. I like him because he just accompanies and is so compatible with Donald Trump in that way. And they both together are a gigantic force. So I hope you guys have a wonderful weekend. Thank you for listening and watching to the Allman Report on this beautiful Friday night. And Ethan Valencia, thanks for all your hard work, brother, as well. You guys have a blessed weekend. See ya.